Hi everyone, I know it's been a really long time since we've done any kind of reading video, but because of my absence today in class, I didn't want you guys to fall behind with the reading, so I decided that giving you guys the video was our best option to keep us on track. We left off on January 22nd, 1944, page 115 in the PDF if you were following along with your own text, which is fine. And we left off yesterday talking about Anne and who the Peter who she dated before she went into hiding, who he was to her and why she is now having dreams about him. Obviously, we know that she is deeply in love with the Peter from before, and that is why she's having all these old feelings come back up after her dream. So we left off there. We're going to kind of move away from the mushy-gushy, lovey stuff, and we're going to move into, again, January 22nd on page 115. Let's get the YouTube video going.
And tell me why it is that people always try so hard to hide their real feelings. How is it that I always behave quite differently from what I should in other people's company? Why do we trust one another so little? I know there must be a reason, but still I sometimes think it's horrible that you find you can never really confide in people, even in those who are nearest to you. It seems as if I've grown up a lot since my dream the other night. I'm much more of an independent being. You'll certainly be amazed when I tell you that even my attitude towards the Van Dons has changed. I suddenly see all the arguments and the rest of it in a different light, and am not as prejudiced as I was. How can I have changed so much? Yes, you see, it suddenly struck me that if Mummy had been different, a real Mumsy, the relationship might have been quite different. It's true that Mrs. Van Don is by no means a nice person, but still, I do think that half the quarrels could be avoided if it weren't for the fact that when the conversation gets tricky, Mummy Van Don has one good side, and that is that you can talk to her. Despite all her selfishness, stinginess, and underhandedness, you can make her give in easily, as long as you don't irritate her and get on the wrong side of her. This way doesn't work every time, but if you have patience, you can try again and see how far you get. All the problems of our upbringing, of our being spoiled, the food, it could have been quite different if we'd remained perfectly open and friendly, and not always only on the lookout for something to seize on. I know exactly what you'll say, Kitty. But, Anna, do these words really come from your lips? From you who have had to listen to so many harsh words from the people upstairs? From you, the girl who has suffered so many injustices? And yet they come from me. I want to start afresh, and try to get to the bottom of it all, not be like the saying, the young always follow a bad example. I want to examine the whole matter carefully myself, and find out what is true and what is exaggerated. Then, if I myself am disappointed in them, I can adopt the same lines as Mummy and Daddy. If not, I shall try first of all to make them alter their ideas, and if I don't succeed, I shall stick to my own opinions and judgment. I shall seize every opportunity to discuss openly all our points of argument with Mrs. Van Don, and not be afraid of declaring myself neutral, even at the cost of being called a know-it-all. It is not that I shall be going against my own family, but from today there will be no more unkind gossip on my part. Until now I was immovable. I always thought the Van Dons were in the wrong, but we too are partly to blame. We have certainly been right over the subject matter, but handling of others from intelligent people, which we consider ourselves to be, one expects more insight. I hope that I have acquired a bit of insight, and will use it well when the occasion arises. Yours, Anna.
All right, so we have been talking a lot recently about how Anne has been maturing, obviously physically, and also, I guess, mentally and in her personality. And I don't know if I had talked to you guys about this before, but your age group, and obviously Anne's age group, you're very self-involved, which isn't a bad thing. It's totally normal at your age. But everything you think centers around you and you alone. And we can see that with Anne. Think about it. She talks about how everybody's mean to her, how she feels about the war or everybody fighting or whatever it is, right? She doesn't give us any other perspective or point of view of the other people. We only know what's going on from Anne's point of view. But now we saw before that she is trying her hardest to understand why her mom and she have a poor relationship, and she's kind of come to the conclusion and has an answer to that question. But she's also trying to understand her mom's point of view or side of things when they have an argument, and is working on biting her tongue more often with her mom. She's doing the same thing here with the Van Dans, right? She just said that. She's going to do her best to try to understand their side of the argument, and has finally come to the conclusion that, the Franks are not perfect or innocent in all the fighting either. So we can really see that Anne is moving away from only focusing on herself and is starting to look at the point of view and perspective of other people living in the annex, which is a big, big thing. So that's why we read this particular diary entry, because it is more proof that Anne is obviously becoming a mature young woman. Okay, so we're skipping January 24th. There's not a whole lot that goes on. Peter and Anne kind of talk about sex. Isn't really important to the story, and honestly, it's just awkward, and I didn't want to read it with you guys again. So we're moving on. And for whatever reason, the PDF has it wrong. This is supposed to be the 27th. So we're skipping the first Friday, January 28th, and we are moving to the second one on page 119. So this is where we are next. Let me go ahead and press play, and we can
this morning, whether you don't sometimes feel rather like a cow who has had to chew over all the old pieces of news again and again, and who finally yawns loudly and silently wishes that Anna would occasionally dig up something new. Alas, I know it's dull for you, but try to put yourself in my place, and imagine how sick I am of the old cows who keep having to be pulled out of the ditch again. If the conversation at mealtimes isn't over politics or a delicious meal, then Mummy or Mrs. Bondon trot out one of the old stories of their youth, which we've heard so many times before. Or Dussel twaddles on about his wife's extensive wardrobe, beautiful racehorses, leaking rowboats, boys who can swim at the age of 4, muscular pains and nervous patients. What it all boils down to is this: that if one of the 8 of us opens his mouth, the other 7 can finish the story for him. We all know the point of every joke from the start, and the storyteller is alone in laughing at his witticisms. The various milkmen, grocers, and butchers of the 2 ex-housewives have already grown beards in our minds, so often have they been praised to the skies or pulled to pieces. It is impossible for anything in the conversation here to be fresh or new. Still, all this would be bearable if the grown-ups didn't have their little way of telling the stories with which Coupuis, Hank, or Miep oblige the company, 10 times over, and adding their own little frills and furbelows, so that I often have to pinch my arm under the table to prevent myself from putting them right. Little children such as Anna must never, under any circumstances, know better than the grown-ups, however many blunders they make, and to whatever extent they allow their imagination subject of Coupuises and Hanks is that of people in hiding and in the underground movement. They know very well that anything to do with other people in hiding interests us tremendously, and how deeply we can sympathize with the sufferings of people who get taken away, and rejoice with the liberated prisoner. We are quite as used to the idea of going into hiding or underground as in bygone days one was used to Daddy's bedroom slippers warming in front of the fire. There are a great number of organizations such as the Free Netherlands, which forge identity cards, supply money to people underground, find hiding places for people, and work for young men in hiding. And it is amazing how much noble, unselfish work these people are doing, risking their own lives to help and save others. Our helpers are a very good example. They have pulled us through up till now, and we hope they will bring us safely to dry land. Otherwise, they will have to share the same fate as the many others who are being searched for. Never have we heard one word of the burden which we certainly must be to them. Never has one of them complained of all the trouble we give. They all come upstairs every day, talk to the men about business and politics, to the women about food and wartime difficulties, and about newspapers and books with the children. They put on the brightest possible faces, bring flowers and presents for birthdays and bank holidays, are always ready to help and do all they can. That is something we must never forget. Although others may show heroism in the war or against the Germans, our helpers display heroism in their cheerfulness and affection. The wildest tales are going round, but still they are usually founded on fact. For instance, Coupuis told us this week that in Gelderland 2 football 11s met, and one side consisted solely of members of the underground, and the other was made up of members of the police. New ration books are being handed out in Hilversum. In order that the many people in hiding may also draw rations, the officials have given instructions to those of them in the district to come at a certain time, so that they can collect their documents from a separate little table. Still, they'll have to be careful that such impudent tricks do not reach the ears of the Germans. Yours, Anna.
Okay, so with this one, we get, obviously living with somebody for especially the same people, and that's the only people that you see for almost 2 years, you're going to hear all their stories and you're going to know all their stories. So that kind of is unsurprising. But the part that really was interesting to me that I didn't know about was the resistance groups, who, I mean, obviously it makes sense. Not everybody's going to, as we've seen, go along with what Hitler is doing. But the fact that we have groups like Free the Netherlands that are forging identity cards and providing money and hiding places for these people who are being persecuted and killed in most severe cases, is a really big thing, right? And Anne kind of sings the praises of the people that have helped them. So this is a pretty big deal. We are going to stop there for today. You do have some questions to answer over today's reading so that I can make sure that you actually listen to the video or at least read on your own. If you guys have questions, you can message me. I probably won't get back to you until after school though, so just keep that in mind. Thanks, guys.